Hi, it's ChickenboneJohn here. Welcome to the part 2 of our building a cigar box guitar. If you've seen the first part, you've learned how to glue together two pieces of wood from the neck stick and the back strap. What we're going to do now is learn how to clean up this joint. It's really easy. We'll just be using a piece of sandpaper and a block. Or if it's a little bit more out of shape, we're going to use this. It's a plane. Don't be frightened. No power tools needed. This is all cheap stuff. I think a lot of people are frightened about using the plane. It's dead easy. You can pick one cheap on eBay for a tenner or a car boot sale. Let's get into it. Okay, so if you just saw our first video on how to put together a cigar box guitar, you may have got this far. You've got the neck and the back strap glued up together. Now that needs smoothing out and just tidying up. Here's one that I've actually planed down, and I can feel with my fingers that's nice and smooth. So there's a couple of things we can do here. None of this is going to involve anything fancy. Here's one, and I've managed to put this together pretty decently without much of a, I can't feel much of a mark in it. So there's a couple of ways we can do this, and if you've managed to glue it up so neatly, all you'll probably need is a sheet of sandpaper. This is taken off a roll, and that's 120 grit. By the way, the grit number, the higher it is, the finer the paper it is. And you need to use a block so you can work evenly across here. So here's one that's just a cut from a piece of beech, but a bit of 2x3 is good, something that fits your hand. Here's another smaller one which is just cut from a piece of old neck stock. It's done a little bit more sort of ergonomically, but because we've got this width here, I want something that's going to cover the width of this. Okay, so to keep this in position, this is my workbench, which I use for most of my light assembly and light work. It's an old drawing board, but really it's just a piece of melamine faced chipboard. What I've done here, I'll put a bench stop on effectively, like you would have on a workbench, and it's just a piece of timber that's lower than this, so that any tools I use won't get in the way. Let's turn that round a bit. Okay, and it's just held in place with a couple of these clamps. The C or G clamp is a fantastic piece of kit for clamping things together. That's how we clamped these, clamping things to the workbench. These speed grips are perfectly good clamps, but for putting on real pressure and getting something fixed, I don't think you can beat these. I bought these from Rutland's in the UK. Got 10 for less than a £30 delivered. Okay, so we're just going to smooth this off. Okay, now I can see the glue, so we're just going to rub this down. So I'm just holding it down with one hand here. This is a bit weird because I'm left-handed, but there you go. So we're just going to, I'm going to knock most of the glue off. Now to see what we're actually doing, we can actually put a pencil mark right the way along there. Some people call it a witness mark. I don't think that is technically speaking correct, but it will allow you to see what progress you're making. See, we're just going the whole length of this. You might need to keep tapping out your sandpaper to stop it clogging up. You could go coarser grit than this. I don't have any to hand. You certainly don't want any lighter than 120. 240 is not going to make enough impression, to be honest. And you may be able to see what's happening to my pencil line, my witness mark. If I just tidy that up, most of it's going, but I can see a little bit here, and I can feel a little bit here. I'm going to do that again. It's just an ordinary HB pencil, nothing fancy, and I'm going to go across again. You can see this part is being left, it's a little bit low. But in all honesty, I'm really only interested in the bits that are going to be sticking out of the box. So this area and this area is where I want to be working. Just turn my sandpaper around a bit to present a fresh edge. That's all there is to it. And we're beginning to get there now with a nice, it's not quite so even in the middle. I know this sounds a little bit basic, you know, sanding a piece of wood, but putting the little mark in can show you what progress you're making. So you've got a bit more glue in here. What we could do alternatively is use one of these, a hand plane. I've got a few here. These are all acquired second hand, gifted to me or whatever. This is a Stanley number 4. I think one of the most useful tools you can have in your workshop. Easy to pick up cheap on eBay or at car boot sales. That's a number 5. That's a record. And that's a number 6. The bigger the number, the bigger the plane. These are handy for straightening out long pieces of wood, but if you're going to get a plane, that is really your classic workshop plane. That's a Stanley Bailey, I think that was the guy who designed it, number 4. You can get different sizes. In between you can get a 3, 3.5, 4, 4.5 and so forth. But that's the one to go for. There's numerous things on the YouTube on how to set these things up, sharpen them and so forth. Okay, so what I'm going to do, using that stop, that's going to stop, yeah, it's going to stop this moving about. So I'm going to do this without any vice or anything. But what you might want to do is, if you're not too sure about this, you can just clamp this into position, just using a speed clamp here. So that's not going to move about, but you want it well clear of where you're working so you can run your plane along here. I've got very little of the blade protruding. Before you start working you want to set this, and you may see I've just got a little bit of a shaving in there. The hard glue will blunt your blade, so you might want to try scraping it off so you don't damage your plane blade so much. But blades need sharpening, so don't worry too much. And you can see I'm taking just a really thin shaving off there. This is set fairly sharp. I'm no expert at sharpening these things, but that's taking a fairly smooth and I can feel it. It feels like glass when you do this. And I don't need to put a registration mark on that. I can feel it. That's coming out bang on smooth. Needs a little bit more work here, but you see, you can't see the join, as Eric Morecambe used to say. You can work your plane at a bit of an angle. It seems to like it a little bit that way. Okay, so when you're finished, you should have a piece of wood that looks like that. And if I can bring that up to the camera and if it will focus, but you can see there's no glue joint visible. That's how you want it. And if you've clamped it properly with these cast iron clamps, that's the sort of job that you're going to get. Okay, while you're at that, if you've been planing or sanding it, it's always useful to check your progress with a square. So I'm just going to check that I've not taken my wood out of square. Not sure if you can see that. Okay, so I'm looking down there. It's a bit difficult to get this on camera. So what I'm going to do is check that for square to make sure that I've not planed off unevenly. What I normally would do was would be sight down the end of it like I was sighting down the camera. So I'm fairly happy with that. I'm just check all the way around. So that's all there is to prepping that part of your wood. Okay, so hopefully you should have ended up with a nice smooth piece of wood where you can't even see the joint, in the words of Eric Morecambe. So next up we're going to learn how to shape the headstock, sort of Fender style. Again, we're just going to be using simple tools. Catch you on further down the road. Thanks for viewing.